Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited about this week's reading vlog. It's still your standard like mood reading vlog for the week or longer if that's what it takes, but we do have a little bit of a theme that still allows me to have my mood reading abilities. No, Puggles, please stop moving the camera. The theme this week still allows me to have my mood reading space to mood read, but it is still like a cute theme that I can have on the thumbnail. That's why I have a theme. But yeah, you can probably tell it is like a rainbow reading vlog. This week we are reading books of the rainbow. I'm trying to get through some of these physical books that I own. I have a lot that are unread. I am using the rainbow as reference: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet as the color palette. As for what I'll read first, I knew I wasn't in the mood for fantasy. For example, I do have this copy of The Wizard of Oz, which I've actually never read, but I wasn't sure if I was in the mood for it, but this was an option. I also had The Thursday Murder Club, which I've heard great things about, but I'm not sure if I wanted to start a series. I've heard a lot of things about this one as well. I could do a reread of Scythe, because I never finished this series. I have read this, so it would count as a reread, which I always try to do rereads as often as I can. That's a point of like hoarding a ton of books. So that was an option, but I wanted to start something short to really get in the mood for this reading vlog. So I chose The Maid by Nita Prose. I know this is the first in a series, but it is fairly short. I believe in this book we follow a maid who is a maid, like she gets involved in like some sort of murder mystery. I think this might be a whodunit type of book. Our main character is autistic. I'm personally not autistic, so I don't know like how well the representation is. I've heard good things and I've heard some pretty mixed things about her representation. I will look at reviews and kind of like come together with like a consensus of what people have said about the representation. But yeah, this is what I wanted to read first. Red. It is Monday the 13th. I might regret saying the actual date depending on when this goes live, but yeah, here is Red. Okay, excuse my appearance. It's like 2:30 in the morning, but I did finish The Maid by Nita Prose, and I'm kind of going between like a 4 and a 3.5, maybe a 3.5, but it's gonna round up like on Goodreads. Okay, so I did find this book very charming. There's something very quaint about this like murder mystery. I did like how it was very isolated and there were no like random characters thrown in the third act, and we're supposed to like roll with it. Like for example, I've read a mystery where like the person who did it was someone's friend's neighbor's gardener or something super random, and I'm like, well, how was I supposed to know who that character was? Like, you've never talked about them. Everyone here who was involved like had like a part to play in the mystery, that kind of thing. I thought most of the characters were nuanced enough. Now, certain aspects of these characters, understandably, people don't like. I'll start with our main character, Molly the maid. She is very coded to be neurodivergent, and I don't think the author ever has publicly said that she's supposed to be autistic. It's also not written like on paper, but it's very like obviously like coded that way, and not in like a fan way that, you know, I might feel an attachment towards a character because they represent that part of you. I'm not autistic, but like in the same way that someone might see a certain character as gay and they feel represented by that, you know, that kind of thing. This is very obviously like she's neurodivergent. She talks about how like she's different and people see the world differently, but we're all like the same and all that kind of thing, and that's great. But sometimes it read very like childish, I guess. There's some moments where I was like, yes, this makes sense for our character to not quite understand social cues and like tone and things like that, but then some things were just so like you'd have to be a child to believe that, and I hope that doesn't come across like badly. I know that it's a spectrum of like autism and things like that. One moment Molly just like doesn't understand someone's intentions when they're talking to her, and the other moment like she would be like doing behavioral analysis on a person, and it wasn't consistent that way. She's very like cutesy, quirky, and if you have like a problem with like the cutesy, quirky, like autistic female character, this does like play into that. One of our other main characters well, side characters, is a man named Juan Manuel, and he is a dishwasher slash cook, works in the kitchens in this hotel. I, being Mexican myself, understand the stereotypes that Mexicans play. Some people had a problem with this, some people didn't. I guess it depends on how well you think this character is written and portrayed. I thought they were fine. I don't think they were like a terrible, just like a stereotype of a character, but we all have different like standards. So some people might just feel like he's too stereotypical Mexican immigrant working in the kitchens, gets involved with drug problems, and that's too much like on the nose. And if you don't like it, that's completely understandable. Like I said, I thought it was okay, but yeah, there's some character stuff here that people might not like, but I did like the overall tone of this, and I do just like a murder mystery. I would read the next book as well, just because this was so readable and like fun. So now that I finished with red, we can move on to like orange. I have a stack of like orangey reddish books. Anything from the spine or the cover counts, in my opinion. This is also my vlog, so we're just gonna do it that way. I do have this, The Last Anniversary by Liane Moriarty. She's the author of Big Little Lies, which got the HBO adaptation, which I really liked. I really liked the book and I loved the adaptation. And I guess this is kind of similar genre. In this book, we have a character who broke up with her boyfriend. She's been single ever since. I believe her ex has now like gotten married and has like a great life, and she's like still single, but she inherits somehow his aunt's home on some island. Don't really know. And she kind of gets involved with like local drama stuff, so very like much like I guess like Big Little Lies, dramas and secrets and that kind of thing. Very like general fiction, domestic drama type stuff, which I always like. I do find that fun. Like family secrets is like my favorite thing ever. So this is always an option, but I did just finish reading something non-fantastical. I was hoping for something more fantastical, but this is an option. I have Emma by Jane Austen. I really liked reading Pride and Prejudice earlier this year. It was actually the first book I read this year. I've heard that if I liked the humor in Pride and Prejudice, which I did, this might be good as well. Like the kind of drama-ness of it. This is kind of orange. Iron Widow by Xiran Zhao. This is a sci-fi mecha take on the first Empress of China. I believe there's kind of like these giant mechs that women are supposed to like pilot, and it's also polyamorous YA, so that's always great. Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. Loved the movie adaptation. I never read the book, but I've heard that the book does follow Astrid more, that character, so this is also an option. So the spine is mostly kind of like orangey. This is kind of orangey reddish, so I don't know if this kind of counts, but this is the Mark of Athena. This is the third book in the Heroes of Olympus series, which I never finished. I kind of left off on this actual book, and I do want to read the rest of this universe because I did really enjoy it when I first read it. It's really fun, wholesome, you know, Greek mythology, that kind of thing. And then I have The English Wife by Lauren Willig. I don't know if it's historical. It obviously looks that way. It's kind of orange, kind of bending the rules a little bit. I believe in this one, a wealthy man is found murdered and his wife has also disappeared, assumed drowned, and the wealthy man's sister makes an alliance with, I want to say like a detective, to find out what happened to her brother and his wife. So it's like kind of like a detective-y mystery story. But I did just finish reading a mystery as well, so this might make me a little overwhelmed with like the mystery genre. But I think what I'm leaning towards after talking about these books with y'all is Iron Widow. It's a sci-fi, it's YA, so different genre, different age range from my last book, so this should keep me motivated. And I've heard mostly good things, a few critiques as well. We will start on this one for orange. Okay, hello. So I have a little bit of an update, but as you saw in my last clip, I did go to the library, and let me show you what I got. My rule of thumb when I go to the library is at least half of the things that I check out have to be part of an ongoing series that I'm currently reading, just so like I am a bit more strict with like finishing and continuing series, because I'm really bad at continuing them. So I have 4 books, which means 2 of them are part of a series. Let me get to those first. I have Bitten by Patricia Briggs. This is the 12th book in the Mercy Thompson series, which I've been loving, and I talk about it all the time, and I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but Mercy Thompson is a mechanic. She's also a coyote shifter. In this world, at least in the first book, werewolves and fae have come out to the public, like they letting everyone know that they exist, and it causes a lot of political and like cultural problems, as you can imagine, and Mercy kind of gets involved with it. She lives really close to a very important wolf pack in the States, and she gets involved in a lot of paranormal urban drama. Very episodic. Some threads of the story do kind of connect throughout the series, but it's more like monster of the week, I guess. I love urban paranormals. I'm like so obsessed with them. Anything else? No. Moving on, I did get Magic Rises by Ilona Andrews. This is the 6th book in the Cate Daniel series. Again, like Mercy, like the Mercy Thompson series, urban paranormal, I love them. I got this one from book 1. I absolutely fell in love from book 1. The Mercy Thompson one took me a while to get into it, but this one, loved from the beginning. I don't really want to speak too much on what Cate Daniels' history is. It's part of like the narrative, like the story. Like we don't immediately know, is she like altogether human, but she also gets involved in like paranormal, shifter, vampire, ghost drama, ghosts, I don't remember. The setting of this one is actually really cool, and that's what really drove me to pick this up. This takes place in Atlanta, but it takes place in this universe where technology and magic kind of like vie for dominance, and a few years ago tech completely like failed, and like skyscrapers fell, and like, you know, cars and phones and things that like don't really work anymore. There are some moments where tech does kind of have some power, but it quickly fades after like an hour or so, and magic comes back to its peak. That's what allowed a lot of this paranormal supernatural stuff to like come to life. Don't want to talk too much about what's going on, because this one's less episodic and more connecting a whole series. So just know that I really love them, and I think they're very witty, and I actually do really like the romance that we see with Cate and you know who. So as far as like the books that are not a ongoing series for me, I have Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule. This is part of the High Republic era of the canon work of Star Wars. I've been wanting to read more of these. I've read the, what's it called? It's the one with Dooku and Asajj Ventress. Yeah, Dooku Jedi Lost. I've read that one and I really liked it. It was an audiobook, and the audiobooks are typically pretty good for the Star Wars books if you're not interested in reading them. They have like the score, they have like blaster noises, saber noises, and really good voice acting if someone's trying to portray like Yoda or Obi-Wan, and they obviously don't have those actors to do the roles for the audiobooks. Really well done. I don't have like a clear grasp about what this particular one's about, but I've been wanting to get back into Star Wars, but not necessarily part of like the Skywalker saga, because it's a bit much, and I, like, a lot of people don't really like how it ended. We're gonna go back to the High Republic era, which takes place a couple hundred years before the Skywalker stuff started. So yes. And then I also have The Chosen and the Beautiful by Nevo. I really like Nevo's Siren Queen. I think it came out like 2 or 3 years ago, and it's one of my favorite books of that year that it came out. I got an ARC for it and it was great. This is a, I believe, queer reimagining of The Great Gatsby, and you don't have to tell me anything else. I will read it. Love Nevo's work. So yeah, that is the library haul. But I have gone pretty far into Iron Widow by Xiran J. Zhao. I am really liking this. I'm so pleased that I'm just like having fun reading this. YA can be hit or miss for me right now. So plot wise, I think I mentioned it before, but our main character lives in this world where these kind of like aliens have come down to Earth and kind of created like mass havoc for the people, and in response to this like catastrophic event, the people of this empire have created these chrysalises, which are like the remnants of these alien things, and they are essentially giant mechs like Pacific Rim. Unfortunately, in order to power these things, you need a large amount of chi, I think, and you need 2 people, and the men that are asked to pilot these chrysalids are like really powerful and respected, but they do use women as like concubines. They're easily thrown away. It's almost expected that the women that are going to help pilot these giant mechs are going to die doing so. Most women don't live past a few rides on these mechs, and our main character Zetian, her sister was used as a concubine and died, and she wants revenge against the pilot that would kill her. It's really unfortunate. This is a like reimagining of Wu Zetian, who was the first female like empress of China. I think she was the only empress of China. The author is Chinese as well, and I've loved their like YouTube videos on like Chinese culture and history, so they're very like well read up on that aspect of the book, but also just really fun. And I do like the world building and everything that's gone into it. I read another book that had like mechs and stuff recently. I forgot what it was called, but that one just really did not connect the dots. The world building was kind of off. This one is kind of doing what that other one did not do for me. I'm also really enjoying like the romance, which doesn't happen for YA. I'm getting that kind of like giddy feeling that I used to get when I would read like Twilight and stuff like that. Really fun. I think it's polyamorous, which is not common for YA as well. I think that's how it's gonna, at least this book's gonna end with. There are some things that I'm gonna give the book a pass on, like some things are just easily explained away and dealt with, and like not plot armor, but for example there's like a wealthy character that kind of just like makes things happen really quickly for our character's benefit, and like with some more explanation and some more conflict help with that, sure, but I guess throw money at your problem and it'll work for you and the plot will move forward, that kind of thing. So I'm really enjoying it so far. It's like at a 4-star for me, so I will come back when I'm done so I can give you my full thoughts. My back is killing me and I just finished eating, so my stomach hurts, so I will come back later. Okay, so I did finish Iron Widow by Xiran Zhao. I had a good time with it. Like I said before, like I think this is just a fun thing that's so up my alley. I love giant mechs. East Asian fantasy sci-fi, this is specifically like Chinese, is so fun to me. I was already kind of biased going into it, so I think for rating I'm gonna give it a 4, and most of that is enjoyment, but there are some things that are obviously not great and a lot of readers are gonna pick up. So this is polyamorous, which means that our main character is going to have like multiple love interests, but it's not necessarily going to be one or the other. As for the 2 love interests, I do like both of them. I just wish we got to see both of them grow. One of them was already kind of someone that our main character likes. Like as soon as the story starts, they seem to have some sort of history and we don't get to experience that history, right? So it's not like she really likes him, but we don't yet. And then for the other love interest that we have as well, we don't get to spend enough time with them, so it kind of feels a little rushed as well. And I think that's probably my biggest critique. A lot of this feels rushed, but also not focused as well. A majority of the story, we are building up to this big grand fight. Like I said before, this takes place in what I'm assuming like China, like thousands of years in the future. They mentioned the Great Wall, that kind of thing, and the aliens have come down to Earth. These aliens have taken a big province from this leftover world, and they are trying to kind of retaliate, like plan an attack on these aliens, and we are kind of building up to that. And that attack only really starts, I want to say right here. Like this is the everything, and then this is where the attack starts. It's very little, so it's very quick, and then the attack maybe lasts up until this much. It's not a lot, so it kind of goes by really quickly, but the beginning does start off with like a bang, and I had a really good time with that as well. So it's fast-paced in great moments where it needs to be fast-paced, and then some parts where it's like you needed sometimes to simmer a little bit, and then a big chunk of this middle part is just build up. And like I said before, we could have been focusing on characters. There's a lot of little things that happen here that are nice to build out the story, but I don't know, I just didn't feel like it had enough significance to put into the story, if that makes sense. Like I thought it was funny, but there's like a photo shoot in the middle of the book our two pilots are having a photo shoot for like popularity, like influencer type reasons. And while it was funny to read and I was like, this is ridiculous and silly and it's not that bad, I was like, well, you know, how important was that for the story? I don't typically say this for YA books. It's a critique that I don't like to give because every author has their intention for writing for a specific age range, but I feel like this could have been so much better if it was like slightly adult or like that new adult age range, because while this does touch on topics that anyone should kind of read from, there's like alcoholism and like familial abuse and like misogyny and things like that, which can be read by all ages. I feel like the author did not go deep enough or was not as nuanced enough as I would have liked it to be. Like there's just so many moments where I was like, oh, like this would have been a really good point to like we should go a little further. They didn't, which is okay. Some parts were a little heavy-handed. There's a lot of discussion on women's roles in society and how they're abused despite being incredibly needed. I mentioned before that women in this world are pretty much thrown away so male pilots can pilot these giant like mech things, which is incredibly unfair. So some of the discussion on feminism can be a little heavy-handed, but again, if the audience reading this is 12, 13, 14, this might be like some of their first like overtly like feminist themes in literature, so I'm fine with that. And there's a really, well, I don't want to spoil anything, but the end, I was incredibly shocked by the end. I did not expect that. It's not something that I see a lot. I liked it and I'm looking forward to the next one. I know that there were some publisher issues with the author and their publisher, which is really unfortunate because this was incredibly popular. As for what I'll read next, I had a huge problem looking for books for yellow. Right off the bat, I thought, well, maybe I could just start Star Wars Light of the Jedi since I borrowed it from my library, but I know a big part of this vlog was to read books on my shelves so I can get them out of the way so I can like actually have read a majority of the books on my shelves, which I haven't. I have, this is half and half, but it's, I would say it's a good chunk of yellow, Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor, which I never read. I remember when everyone was reading this and they were devouring it, and I've heard that it's a fantastic book. I've only read one Laini Taylor book. It's this one, Daughter of Smoke and Bone, and I liked it, but I never continued with it because I'm bad at continuing series, but this was an option as well. I could do a reread of Uprooted by Naomi Novik. It's been a while since I read it and I feel like I didn't really quite grasp the material when I did, so this is always an option. I got this during Book of the Month when it was like still fairly newer service, February 2018, and I don't know what it's about, but the top says he always wanted to fly like a girl, so I have no idea what this is about, but this is an option. Obviously it looks orange on camera, but this is A Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey. I don't know too much of what this is about. I believe there's an adaptation, but I don't want to read too much, but this was an option as well. Another option was reading the first book of the Sweep series. I don't know if anyone remembers this series. I barely do, but this is like witches. This was like the ish when I was really young, when I was still a teenager, so this was an option as well. I really like don't know what to read. You know, I also have like a really old editions of Nancy Drew, which have like yellow spines, which would count, and I haven't read Nancy Drew, and I don't think you have to like read them in order. It's been a while since I read them. Like I was so young when I read them, so I don't remember anything. That's an option as well. So this is kind of the stack. I really don't know what to choose. This is kind of yellow on camera, right? This is The Alchemist, Secrets of like Nicholas Flamel or whatever, also a series that was kind of popular when I was younger. I vaguely remember reading one of the books but not number one because I was a dumb kid and I just picked up whatever looked cool, but this is an option as well. I'm kind of intrigued by this one. I'll come back, I'll read a few like pages of some of these books and I'll come back when I'll let you know what I want to read, but yellow really stumped me. So I did end up starting a yellow book. I started the Sweep series by Cate Tiernan. The first book is called Book of Shadows. This is obviously like a binding of the first 3. I think I mentioned that I'm pretty sure I've read one of these books before, and probably out of order, just because that's how things go when you're younger. You just pick up a book that looks good and then you don't like even realize that it's like part of a series, you know, that kind of thing. So I read the first book, and it is very dated. This book, I'm pretty sure, came out in 2001. At least the first one came out in 2001, so it's over 20 years old. Obviously there's going to be some dated stuff, but I'm kind of inspired to maybe do like a long form, just like throwback retrospective look at this particular book. I used to do like a nostalgic reads series. It's not that I didn't have fun doing it, I just stopped doing them. I might do something similar like that with this particular book, just to kind of like talk about something that's like not necessarily a classic, but something that people my age or younger or older can kind of be like, oh yeah, I remember that book. This book has some like tropes and stuff that we've seen before. A young girl kind of realizes that she's a witch, and like a hot guy moves into like her town, high school, you know, urban type stuff. He's kind of somewhat described like as Edward, like super beautiful, golden eyes, dark hair, not auburn hair, some like teen angsty stuff as well. Literally the first sentence of the book is like, it's like the first day of school and I'm wearing jeans and like a tie-dye t-shirt, which I know tie-dye is like out, but I've always liked tie-dye. I know it's not like trendy anymore, but maybe I'm just like super uncool. I love tie-dye, I love acid wash stuff, but yeah, it's like super dated. There are some like problematic kind of like characters saying like not appropriate things about girls, like specifically like our main character is like supposed to be that kind of mousy, like unassuming type girl, but even then she still says like kind of mean things about like the alt goth girl in her school. Some pretty like nasty stuff, which I don't mind teenage girls kind of being catty like that, but I don't think the author's intention was to like depict cattiness, because it's not like our main character is ever being checked for being neat, like being judgmental towards like the alt girl. So yeah, your typical like YA older stuff, but I'm having fun. Like it's like silly and a little ridiculous. The writing is very like surface level, I guess. It's not super deep or anything, but like it's fun for what it is. Our main character is kind of like figuring out that she's like maybe a witch. She has like psychic vibes, she can see like people's auras now and things like that. There's a lot of Wiccan stuff, which I know is an actual practicing like religion and spirituality, and I don't know much about Wicca, so this book might be offensive if it's like not correct. I wouldn't know, but there are some like Catholicism slander, which as someone who was raised in a Catholic vibe, I don't really care. So yeah, I will check in later. So I finished Book of Shadows, the first book in the Sweep series by Cate Tiernan. It ended super abruptly. It's only like 160 pages, at least in this bind up. 176, excuse me. It's 176 pages, and it went by super quickly, and it's fun and it's silly. But like I said before, it's very like surface level. It's not super deep. There's not a lot of like introspective, like big philosophical questions being asked or anything like that. It's just like a fun silly little like witch series book. The main conflict is very like teenagey conflict. Our main character really wants to be a witch and join this like circle, this little coven with this new hot guy, and a few of her classmates are also joining, but her best friend Bray, who she like absolutely loves and adores, she really likes this new boy. His name is Cal. And Morgan, our main character, is like I don't, she has a crush on him, but she's like, you know, like he's yours, like I don't, you know, I want to date him, I just want to be part of the coven. And she's like, no, he likes you more than me, so I just need you to stop going to the circles and let me like date him first, and then you can come around. And she's like, no girl, like I just want to be part of the circle, like you can have the boy, I really don't care. She does care, but like she's letting her friend have it. So yeah, that's like the main conflict. It's pretty like silly YA teen, early 2000s. So yeah, that's the story. I can't really give it more than 3 stars, but it is fun, and I would like to keep reading the series later on. There's nothing else really to talk about with this book, but it was fun. And so now I have to pick out green. I'll be right back. So for green, I have a couple books I can get for you. I know I don't want fantasy, so I'm gonna ignore this corner. This is where all my fantasy is, so I'm gonna ignore fantasy. Here's some choices that I can go with. This is kind of fantasy adjacent, but I'm gonna like not count it as fantasy. I believe this is about a character who goes to a boarding school in London, and there's like murders, and I think it's also ghost related. This is kind of green, so this is an option by Maureen Johnson, who did the, what's it called, that series that's like at a boarding school, another boarding school, and like she's like investigating a true crime there. The Box, something, the mystery box, something with a box. She did that really popular series. I also have We Are the Ants by Sean David Hutchinson. This was really popular back in the day when I was first getting into booktube, and I believe our main character Henry gets abducted by aliens. They tell him the world is gonna end, but it's also very like slice of life, so this is always an option for like sci-fi, like contemporary sci-fi. I want to choose this, but it actually looks kind of green. I wanted to choose this because I wanted to read something mystery, and this looks mostly black in person, but it could just be the lighting because it is green, right? There's green here. And this is, I believe, about a woman who goes to like a cabin in Wyoming to kind of like a little writing retreat for herself, and she meets a man there and they kind of hit it off, but then she kind of gets like weird feelings about him, and there's also like a disappearance related to this area, so that would be fun. And it's very short, so I think I really want to choose this one. Would you guys forgive me because it's not super green, but it's green enough. I also have The Lion Game by Ruth Ware. I've read one Ruth Ware book and I thought it was okay, the one about the death of Mrs. Westaway, and I thought it was fun. And I believe there's something going on here. I don't know what the plot of this one is, but it's Ruth Ware, so I'm assuming someone's dead and there's a mystery. This is green-ish. This is my vlog, so I kind of want to choose this one. I think I might. It's green in person and it looks green on camera, and if I mess with the saturation it will look green on camera, so I think I might go with this. I just really want to read like a mystery thriller right now. Okay, so ignore my appearance, the light is leaving soon, but I did finish You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Jeneva Rose. I did not like it. I will talk about it tomorrow, but the light is leaving and I don't feel like filming in the evening. And I've made an executive decision to read this library book, Smoke Bin by Patricia Briggs, for Blue. I need to read something good, and these always cheer me up. So I will tell you about this book tomorrow. It was a hot dookie diaper of a mess. So okay, I promised I'd come back and talk about why I hated this book. This was You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Jeneva Rose for green. I don't like this. I'm giving this a 1.5. 1-star books I typically leave for like, no one should read this. That's what 1 star means to me. Like, no one needs to read this. This is hot garbage. Like, it's pretty bad and even like treads on like problematic, you know what I mean? In my mind, there's at least one person out there who will like a certain book. This one might not be for me, and I'll tell you, I think the person who would really like this is someone who's never read mystery thriller, because I feel like it's so cheesy and it's so like, we've seen this before. I just feel like you'd only get enjoyment if you've never treaded into mystery thriller at all, so you don't really know like any like the twists and things like that. Like, you're not familiar with certain tropes and how silly they can be and whatever. But yeah, I typically don't recommend this in general for anyone, but it's not so bad that I'm like, I don't think anyone should ever read this. There might be someone who likes this book. Okay, so a couple things bothered me. I made a little silly TikTok about it, but this one singular red tab is because there is a really cringy Colleen Hoover reference, and immediately I was like, ooh, that's not good. A more serious note, there was like 1, 2, and 3 major problems I had with this, and then nothing really that great. We're doing a sandwich method where it's like 1 compliment, your critiques, and then a last compliment. I'm having trouble coming up with compliments here. Before I get into that, this book is about a woman named Grace who is from New York City, and she picked a random destination to vacation at Wyoming, very rural part of Wyoming. She's visiting an Airbnb for her stay, and she kind of develops feelings for the owner of the Airbnb. He's kind of like a rancher type. I pictured Glenn Powell in my mind, if that makes sense. They grow feelings, so I guess this is supposed to be like a kind of romantic suspense thriller novel, which I don't read a lot of, so maybe this is quite common, or this is pretty good for romantic thriller suspense. I don't know, right off the bat, our author really wanted to emphasize the cultural differences between someone from the big city and someone from rural Wyoming, which will happen. I'm from Texas, and I'm sure I'd have some, you know, cultural differences with people from Rhode Island, but it was really hammed up that it started to read like Hallmark. Girl from the big city discovers the meaning of Christmas when she goes to visit a small town. Like, very cheesy, but this isn't cheesy. This is a thriller. It just didn't read well. Like, for example, the first day, like day one, this book is separated by days. Day one, she is driving into town. She didn't fly in. She's driving into town with heels on, and she's like walking around Wyoming with heels, and she's not like dumb, and she's not like a vapid influencer type. She's like, she works in banks or something. And why are you walking around in heels? Like, I get that you're trying to emphasize that this girl's from New York and this is Wyoming, but like, our characters don't have to be silly either. At some point, our male main character Calvin, he's showing the Airbnb to Grace, and he's like, this is the farm where I grow some produce for myself. And Grace is like asking questions, and in his mind he's like, wow, I couldn't believe that someone from the big city like cares about farming. Like, I thought it was like beneath her or something. And it's like, why? It's farming. Like, she's probably been to like a farmer's market. She might not be able to farm in New York, but she has access to produce because she needs it to survive. But also, on the other hand, Grace also was asking this one question, which I thought was so dumb. She was like, oh, like, what do you like to grow or farm? Sorry, I don't know the lingo, the terminology. What terminology? Like, what do you grow? What do you farm? It's just like trying so hard to like create those cultural differences. Calvin also has a tendency to like not like other girls. Grace doesn't really do that to herself, so I guess you can kind of explain it in a way that that's part of his character and not necessarily a fault of the author. One thing I notice about mystery thriller books is authors typically like to throw in these random one-liners that are supposed to like grow tension, as opposed for the actual events in the book to like grow the tension, grow the angst. For example, when Calvin is showing Grace the farm, he's like, here are my free-range chickens and goats or whatever. I let them roam around, you know, throughout the day, and then when evening comes, I lock them up for their safety. Completely normal conversation. Randomly thrown in would be a line like, but not everything is supposed to be roam free. Some things need to be put in cages. And it's like very randomly like tonal shift, and it's so like jarring to read, because it's like, you're not, is that supposed to be weird? Because it just makes me feel like that's kind of cringy. I get cringy as opposed to like shivers running down my spine or anything like that. Sometimes you'll also see that at the end of chapters with some mystery thriller authors. They'll be like wrapping up a chapter, like a character's gonna go to bed and they're like getting ready, whatever, and then, you know, a line will be thrown in like, little did I know I wasn't the only one alone that night, or something. Again, something that's supposed to evoke chills, but it just reads as like cringe to me. And my last critique is kind of like a giant spoiler for the book, so if you want to keep going forward until I talk about my next read, feel free to, but I'm going to spoil this book because I hate this type of ending device, I guess, that this author uses. I just think it's lazy, and yeah, so I'm gonna spoil the book. One of the plot points in this book is that there's a missing woman, and Grace kind of has a feeling that despite how much she likes Calvin, she thinks he's responsible for these girls going missing. He's the one who runs an Airbnb like out here. This book is dual perspective, so we get both of their perspectives the entirety of the book. Calvin and Grace are very anxious, they're very worried about each other. They both seem to really like each other, but they're kind of feeling like, what if they don't like me? That, you know, very normal human emotions that you would find in a mystery thriller. But the big reveal is that not only is Calvin the actual killer, like he is the one kidnapping these women, but Grace, this is a surprise, she's also a killer, and she takes these vacations and kills a person just because she has like the urge to. She even gives like this really cringy monologue about like, you know, I have a good home life, like my parents are still married, I'm not a child of divorce, I've never been essayed, I just like really want to kill people. I hated that because that would make more sense if we never got their perspectives. I hate when one of our main characters is like the killer and the author is able to pull the wool over our eyes because they didn't necessarily lie, because that's kind of like the point of a thriller, but they kind of did a 180 on characterization that just like doesn't make sense, or it's not really fair to me as a reader. If I'm reading the killer's perspective and I don't know that they're the killer, I feel like they're thoughts, their inner monologue, should give some hints about that. I don't understand why the killer has no tells in their inner monologue. I hope that kind of makes sense. Like, our two perspectives are not aware of the narrative. Like, they are not dictating the story to me. It is like a limited perspective, so it's not like they're telling me their thoughts. I maybe you've read books that have that kind of like narrative style, but this is very much like in the moment. They are not aware that they are characters in a book, so there's no reason for them to like hide their like motives in their inner thoughts. Does that kind of make sense? It's one thing for one of our main characters to be the killer and we don't know, because we don't see their perspective, we're not getting their thoughts, but I am getting their thoughts, and these characters genuinely seemed worried and scared for their safety or each other's safety. Actually, no, just kidding. 180 characterization, they're both killers, and it's like, well, that's not, I feel like that's very lazy. It's very cheap, and it creates a twist in like the lamest way possible. So yeah, I hate when books do that. There's another very popular book that did that, and I feel again like it was cheap, lazy, and of course you're gonna get the twist because you were misleading me in not a ethical way. I don't know how else to put it. I don't know how else to explain it. I hate it so much. I have like notes about why I don't like it. This was not good. So yeah, that book put me in such a bad mood that I had to pick up. Anyways, that book put me in such a bad mood that I did have to pick up a Patricia Briggs Mercy Thompson novel. This is one that I got from the library earlier, and I needed this. I could have picked up one of the blue books that I have on my shelves to go through my growing TBR, but I needed this so bad. And literally the first chapter, I was already having so much fun. This is the 12th book in the series. I've talked about the series before, but Mercy Thompson is a coyote, and you know, she gets involved in drama, paranormal, urban fantasy drama. This particular one has to do with Fae and Underhill, and I believe that Underhill is like kicking out people again from her like domain. That's one of the reasons why Fae are publicly exist to humans, because Underhill kicked all of them out. This is Mercy getting into a lot of drama, and there's a lot of family drama already from the beginning. I love family drama in urban paranormal series, along with like the urban paranormal, like witch, vampire, fae drama. Both of those together, perfect. I will be back when I'm done with a very much needed palette cleanse. So yeah, so I did end up finishing Smoke Bitten by Patricia Briggs. I love this series. You know, I love this series, so I'm already gonna have fun with this series, like no matter what happened. This particular installment was so fun as well. My peak for the series was 7 through 10, and I had such a good time with this one. Not that 11 was bad, but this one, number 12, was really good. It came kind of back in with the stuff that I personally like, which is like along with like a cool particular villain of the week. This one also had a lot of personal drama that I like seeing Mercy kind of work through on like a human level. For example, in the beginning, Mercy's partner's ex-wife kind of meddles in with some of their family stuff, and Mercy, not that she did everything perfectly or anything, but Mercy gets involved with like family drama. I love family drama so much. I love hearing other people's drama, whether it be like ex drama, children drama, whatever type drama. I love it. It just like adds to the story. And like I said before, the actual like monster of the week or whatever in this one was also really cool and threatening. Every installment feels like the monster of the week is like an actual threat, because sometimes, you know, for example, the last book, I was like, how can the author top this? Like the last book, I felt like I was on the edge of my seat, like what's gonna happen. This one also felt like that, so it was really good. I enjoyed it. I can't wait for the next one. I don't know which one the next one's called, but I'm sure my library has it, so next time I go over, I'm gonna pick up the next one. I only really have 2 books for the next color, which is indigo. I only have indigo and violet left, and these are the only things that I have that kind of fit indigo. This is like what I'm trying to go for, this color, but I'm not quite sure I'm in the mood for Piranesi by Susanna Clark. So I do have The Woman in Black by Susan Hill, which is like a modern classic. I used to think that this was much older than it was, but it's not. But this is about a lawyer who goes to settle some estate stuff, and he sees a woman in black at like the funeral or something, and he's like investigating like what's up with that. So I hope this kind of counts as indigo. I know it's not the deepest indigo. This would be a more true color, but we'll see what I feel like. If I'm not feeling in the mood for this one, I'll read like a few pages. If I'm not in the mood for this one, I'll try this one. I've already begun editing this video and it's going by like there's a lot already, so I'm gonna kind of speed through these last two colors. So quick little update, these were the two indigo books that I was thinking of reading, and I decided to read none of them. I read chapter 1 of The Woman in Black by Susan Hill, and I am interested in the story and I will read it, but just the writing style I'm just like not in the mood for right now. It is not super dense or complicated, but again, I'm still not super in the mood to read this one at the moment. And then I did pick up the first volume of Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation by Mo Shang Tongshu, and I am very interested in reading this, but I'm still not done with this author's other work, Heaven Official's Blessing. I think I'm on volume 3 of that one, and I don't want to get ahead of myself and like start a bunch of stuff, start a bunch of new series. I said I wasn't, so this is gonna go down for a little bit, but I did read the first chapter and I'm like super interested. So I decided that eventually, I just decided that I will do a reread of The Diviners by Libba Bray, and I feel like this one's like more indigo. It doesn't like look too much like it. This is one of my favorite series, or at least the first book is one of my favorite books of all time. I never finished the series, but I love it that much that like I can still call it one of my favorite series even though I haven't finished it. This book is a YA blend of like historical fiction, mystery, and horror. I absolutely love this. It's a cast of characters that I think are so interesting. In this particular book, we follow a character named Evie, and she gets run out of her like fairly like evangelical Ohio town because of some things that she said and did, and she goes to live with her uncle in New York, and he runs like a creepy crawly like curio like museum of like occult stuff. And while she's there, a like string of murders happen that have like occult vibes and elements, and so the NYPD asks her uncle to like help consult on the case, and she thinks that she has the capabilities to help because, as the title suggests, she's a diviner, as are a lot of other characters in this series. She in particular has this ability to like touch an object and like see its history, for example, but again, other characters have different skills, and again, they're all going to come together for some big plot probably towards the fourth book. This is like my third or fourth time reading it. I think the author did a fantastic job of like incorporating the historical elements for a YA audience, and if you're not super familiar with certain like aspects of US history, some of this might go over your head. Not that you have to know, but for example, like she has references to like Tin Pan Alley or the Harlem Renaissance, for example. It's mentioned in the first book, but it becomes more apparent in the second book, the anti like Chinese immigration law that we had. That is something that is referenced here, and it will become like important later. But yeah, like little nods like that for US history. You can tell that the author really did try to like incorporate that as historically accurate as possible while still like having like the actual story like be important. As much as I love history, I have a degree in history, I don't go to fiction books for like historical accuracy. I think it's nice when it's included, but it's not necessary. If I wanted historical accuracy, I'd like read nonfiction. So I probably won't have much more to say than what I already did, but I'm on page 162, so obviously I have a lot more to go, but it flows actually pretty well. I did end up finishing The Diviners by Libba Bray. I love this book so much. I've read it multiple times already. I don't know like what to say other than like, if you want to read a YA book that is like a great blend of historical fiction, horror, mystery, that wants to start emphasizing the bad aspects of US history, particularly between the 1920s essentially, for a YA audience. Again, I feel like this is like a great book. It's not perfect by any means, but I do think the author did a really good job at incorporating aspects of US history that I don't typically see for this age range, at least at the time it was published. I see a little bit more nowadays, but I thought it was great. So I love this book. It was a little bit of a chunky one to get through, but I love it, and I didn't necessarily speed read, but I already know like the major plot points, so I was only really focusing on like the actual writing aspect of this book. So yeah, I know that this video is getting a little long, so I'm just gonna jump into the next book that I'm going to read, which is The Fervor by Alma Katsu. Some of her works have kind of stood out to me. I'm kind of intrigued by them, but I picked up this one because it has a violet type of tone to it. So yes, this is a horror historical as well, and I believe this follows a woman and her daughter whose husband is off fighting in the Second World War. I believe her husband might be like white, and she and her daughter get sent to an internment camp for Japanese Americans, or just Japanese people in general. Again, another very terrible thing that the United States has done. But while she's at the camp, something horrible, supernatural is happening alongside of the already horrible things that were happening at these camps. I will get through this as fast as I can and then like wrap up this vlog, because it is a little, it's getting a little lengthy even for me. So I did end up finishing The Fervor by Alma Katsu. I liked this one. I would give it like a 3.5. This book is about a woman and her daughter who are sent to live in an internment camp during the Second World War. Her husband is a white man and he is fighting for the Allies over yonder. So that is one aspect of the story that is obviously like at the center of it all. But while she's there at the camp, a illness breaks out that causes people to get like your typical like illness reactions, but also causes people to get really angry and frustrated and paranoid and violent and that kind of thing. And our main character and some other characters kind of come together and get to the bottom of this illness and this like kind of conspiracy that certain aspects of the government might be behind. So it is like a historical fiction horror suspense mystery almost, which I do like, blends of a ton of genres. My biggest issue, however, is that it all kind of came together and resolved itself pretty quickly. I wish that there was more time to really dissect some of the players and reasonings and stuff like that, but we kind of just got answers really quickly and it was dealt with really quickly. I think the idea of this is pretty strong. The illness in this book as a metaphor for the paranoia and the anger that people feel, especially towards certain groups of people, in this case Japanese Americans or any Asians. Honestly, I'm gonna assume that the author wrote this during COVID, when there's a large increase in violence against Asian Americans. The book was also very like unapologetically critical of the United States and its past actions, obviously the internment camps being one, but other stuff. There's an afterword where the author talks about different types of things that the country has done. I also do wish that the author was a little bit more definitive when it came to talking about the scientific horror illness aspects of this, as well as the supernatural elements of it all, because there are some supernatural stuff and I don't feel like the author was like quite like direct about it, if that kind of makes sense. It's kind of just like left hanging. But if you don't really care to have complete closure over like all the stuff in the story, then maybe you won't mind. But I like answers, if that makes sense. Like if you're going to introduce a supernatural aspect, I kind of want you to like delve deeper into it, and the author really didn't. It kind of just existed in this world. I don't want to spoil too much. Overall, did like it. I would try some of the author's other work, because in the afterword the author talks about how this is not quite like her other books, which hopefully means that some of the issues that I have are like improved upon in those other books. So yeah, that means, however, that I'm done with the vlog. It is a long one. I am so sorry if it's too long for you and you barely made it to this point. I did read a couple books, so that makes up for it. I typically read like 4 or 5 in a vlog. I read 7. And just as also, I never mentioned that the rainbow that I taught was red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. I don't know if y'all were taught a different rainbow or whatever, but that's the rainbow that I'm going with. So as a reminder, I read The Maid by Nita Prose for red. I read Iron Widow by Xiran Zhao for orange. For yellow, I read the first book of the Sweep series by Cate Tiernan, which was Book of Shadows. For green, and my biggest regret was You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Jeneva Rose. Hated this one. I already returned it to the library, but I read Smoke Bin by Patricia Briggs for blue. I'll put it right here. For indigo, I reread The Diviners by Libba Bray. For violet, I read The Fervor by Alma Katsu. So yes, that is a vlog. I'm so sorry. Again, it's a really long one. I typically watch my videos at like 1.5, 1.75 speed. So maybe you might, I mean, by the time you're here, you've already watched most of it. So feel free to talk to me down below about anything I've talked about. I'd like to hear anything you have to say. I will also link my social medias down below, as well as some far more important links. Feel free to like, dislike, comment, or subscribe, or do neither. It's all cool with me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.